Good evening, everybody. I'm not Kate, but I'm Martin Gegg, and I am a member of the committee. This evening, we're going to have a talk from Nigel later, but first we're going to hear a few words from Katie from Sight for Surrey. Thank you.
Very much. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay there. Yes, thank you very much. I am Katie, and I am from the charity Sight for Surrey, but as you can see, our full name is Sensory Services by Sight for Surrey. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes, I won't keep you long, from Nigel's star attraction story, just to tell you a little bit about us, because we are a Surrey charity. So we are 101 years old. The founders decided to start the charity just after the First World War, when the Blind Act of 1920 was introduced to support veterans who were coming back, who had obviously lost their sight during the fighting in the Great World War. And so over the years, we have evolved, and things have definitely changed in terms of technology. And these days, we still support people who are blind, partially sighted, deaf-blind, or you might know that as combined sight and hearing loss, or hard of hearing or deaf, right across Surrey. So I thought, we're going to hear, I'm sure, a very inspiring story from Nigel tonight, and I just wanted to share with you a few pictures and stories of people that we work with every day. So I think you can see here on the picture, just down by our logo there, very much illustrating the sensory services part. It's Russell, who is one of our trustees, Russell Gilmore. So he's on our board of directors, and he has combined sight and hearing loss. And he's with his communicator guide, who uses a version of signing that requires touch. So if you think about our senses, we need to use them all. We also have there, right in the middle, Joe is deaf and uses British Sign Language, and we have a friendship group. So there we have some of them out with Joe on a day out, and all sorts of other activities going on. We do look after people really lifelong, both through childhood, through adulthood, or through their lives. And currently we are working with over 8,000 children and adults across Surrey. So as you can see, we use practical methods. Up there on the right, we have someone being trained in being able to use a long cane, which means that they can feel where they're going. As I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people, even though they may have the description that they are blind or vision impaired, it's really impossible to tell what each individual is able to see, because sight conditions are so different. And just as we're looking at that picture, I wonder if you're aware what it means when you see a long cane, a white cane, when it has red stripes. That means that that is combined sensory loss. So if you see someone with a stripy cane, it's not for fun. It means you need to be aware that they may not be able to hear or see. So we provide all sorts of training and support for people, including technology. Up here, my colleagues, that's a very popular item that he's showing, which helps you to have the sound of the TV direct to your hearing aids, which seems to avoid a lot of arguments about the level of volume on the TV. Yes, there's a few little smiles. That. And signing, we go out into the community, and actually what people have been saying when we've been chatting when I was here earlier is, with new technology, that's fantastic. Alexa is really useful to people who have some kind of vision impairment. But for the older generation who perhaps are not as able with new technology, we support that, and we have all sorts of different resources that we can help with and train in technology as well. So I think I'm going to leave it at that with you and just ask you to think about what you can do for yourself and for your members of your family and your relatives and your friends. Most of us will know someone who perhaps struggles a little bit with their sight or their hearing, particularly as we get older. So take care with that. Go to the optician if you think you need to, because they will check your eyesight for health as well. And if you need to go and check your hearing, go to the GP. That's very common, and I get, why can't I hear very well? Check with the GP, and they will refer you onto the NHS if they need to. But in terms of getting involved with us, so kind of you to invite us here this evening to be part of the event with Nigel. I'd just like to ask you to think about what you can do. If you are working, what could your workplace do? Is there anything that could be easier for people who perhaps have some kind of sensory adjustment that might be needed? And if you'd like to get more involved with us, we always need volunteers, and it's a really rewarding thing. I have a colleague with me this evening who is volunteering to support us. We have volunteer drivers. We have phone befrienders. You imagine during the pandemic, that was one of the really key things that we did to help people feel less isolated. So I'm going to leave you with, sorry, my voice cutting in a little there. If you can support us, please just go to our website, and there are lots and lots of different ways to contact us, whether you need extra support to contact us or on the phone. We have texting services, and we will make every adjustment to reach people. So that's all from me this evening. Thank you very much indeed for asking us. I hope you've learned a little about sensory services by Sight for Surrey and our 101st year. And I wish you a lovely evening, and I'm looking forward, like you, to hearing about the amazing things that Nigel has done.
Thanks very much, Katie. Right, I'm not going to take up much time introducing Nigel, because in some ways he doesn't need a lot of introduction. But just to say that I met him about 18 months ago first, and found him truly inspiring. And there is a man who just doesn't give up. And the other thing I'd like to say is that brain injury is... We've invited Nigel along to give this talk, but actually brain injury is about the whole family. So as you're hearing them talk, think about how it affects the rest of the family, and particularly Julie, and how she coped with that, because I'm sure that there were a lot of things that she had to deal with that Nigel didn't even know about at the time. So a big welcome, please, to Nigel Limb and Julie Limb. Just wanted to say something else, that we invited them along here this afternoon, and we had a little bit of a surprise for them. And so if you'd like to have a look at the screen, this is what happened this afternoon. Hi, Nigel and Julie.
Hello there.
Hi there. Hi there.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for coming along today, and we've got something a little bit special for you. I know you're a two-wheel person more than a four-wheel person, but I'm sure you'll be able to be tempted into four wheels.
I'm sure. Oh, with an engine.
It's certainly with an engine. So if you'd like to come this way,
Cheers, thanks.
step there. And then you can have a go up, test it up.
Only the passenger seat.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you not sign now?
Yeah, all right. spot on.
Stop grinning.
Yeah.
It's a good way to see the banking.
Oh,
as
it is.
well.
it's
The back end's kind of
Yeah.
was moving. Like you could feel it rolling on the tyre. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just thought, what a privilege.
I know,
You know, to
well-
be sat in that seat and to go round there where people have done that
Well,
so many years ago.
Yeah. It's just awesome, isn't
Nearly
it?
100 years ago, right?
And in the
Will be 100 years.
1907.
To ask you how you got on. What did you think of that then?
Crazy, isn't it? Eh?
I've asked him several times and he can't find the words. So.
Just insane. Yeah.
Okay, right. So I'll leave the two of you to talk away. So enjoy.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us here. I mean, such an iconic theatre of speed. I mean, it's just mind-blowing, isn't it? And the fact Martin did this for us was just mind-blowing as well. So I'm Nigel. 8 years ago, I suffered major brain damage, and that's left me with bilateral purchase retinopathy, which means I'm partially blind in both eyes. This is Julie, my wife. So if I can rewind you back to 2015, just before Christmas, Julie was working full-time, was educated to degree level, was a horse rider. She'd represented her home county of Lincolnshire as a horse rider, so obviously a very able lady. I'd had my business as an auto electrician for 27 years, and Christmas Day 2015, me and Julie celebrating Christmas with his children and grandchildren, and then 2 days later, Armageddon sets in. So I'd been racing in the winter series of the beach racing at Mablethorpe. We live 3 miles away from the beach at Mablethorpe. When the sea goes out at Mablethorpe, the beach is just like Bonneville Salt Flats. So they build oval circuit on there. I think it's about 400 metres total, so it's a pretty big circuit. They have it every fortnight to do with the lunar cycle as the tide goes really out, so it's every fortnight for 6 months. I was racing in the class of grass track bike, which is basically it's a speedway bike, but with slight rear suspension on the back. So it has a 500cc Jawa engine that runs on methanol, no brakes. It does have 2 gears, unlike Speedway. Speedway has only 1 gear. So on the 27th of December, I loaded my van up with the bike, drove to the track, and had 3 successful races. And on the 4th race, nobody knows what happened, but I had a freak accident. And I hit the only thing on Mablethorpe Beach that was solid. There's an outreach that comes out from the promenade, which lets the rainwater soak away into the sea. And I hit that flat out. As I say, nobody knows what happened, even I don't. So that then rendered me with brain damage. The paramedics at the scene worked on me, I believe, for about an hour. Because I've got no injuries, as in, no obvious injuries, they worked on me and thought, I'd just had an accident. But apparently I started fitting quite heavy, and then they realised, because they cut my suit off me and everything, and I've got, as I say, there were no broken bones or nothing. When they took my helmet off, I got blood coming from my ear, and I started fitting, and so they knew then there was something wrong. So they phoned the air ambulance, and the air ambulance came and took me into Hull Hospital, and that's where you got involved, isn't it?
Yeah, so as Nigel said, it was 2 days after Christmas, and we'd just been having a lovely time. Nigel said, "Oh, are you going to come with me to the race?" And I said, "Oh no, I'll stay at home. You go and play with your friends." It was a really bright blue sky, cold winter's day. It was beautiful. And I'd seen some footage on Facebook. There was people dressed as Santa racing round, and everyone was having a good time. And we were planning a family party at New Year, so I said I'll just stay and clean the house and get things ready for the next couple of days for more celebrations. I got my music on. I love loud music. I quite like cleaning with loud music. And anyway, so I'd stopped for a break to have a sandwich, and my phone rang. And it was Nigel's face that came up on the phone, but it wasn't his voice. And at that point, I knew that something terrible had happened because it was his best friend. He said, don't worry, Nigel's had a bit of an accident, but can you come as soon as you can? So that was my experience. My daughter's partner came and picked me up, and by the time I arrived, he was already in the air ambulance. So I knew it was pretty serious. So I said, can I go with him? And they said no, because there's not enough room. They have enough room for the paramedics and the patient, that's it. Hull is about 60 miles from us. And it takes them about 20 minutes, I think, in the helicopter. But obviously, we were about an hour and a half or something getting there after. Yeah. So, of course, Nigel knows nothing about any of this because he was literally unconscious. They kept him sedated because he was fitting. So we arrived at the hospital. He was in the emergency room when we went in. And they said to me, he's covered in sand, what has he been doing? So I said, well, he's been racing on the beach. He hasn't told you this, but he's allergic to plasters, the most accident-prone man in the universe. So he'd had an off on his bike the day before. He'd been testing it down the drive, and it had gone off with him, and he'd skinned all his knees, so he got his knee wrapped in cling film. And they said, he's got cling film around his legs. Yeah. And his left foot is mangled from a previous accident, and he's done his foot. I said, don't touch his foot, that was already like that. So, you know, so at that point, they were saying, don't worry, we'll get him stable. And we were kind of obviously worried, but didn't realise how serious it was. And then they transferred him onto the ICU. Of course, it'd been Christmas, they were very short-staffed, but they had 2 ICU wards, which were both totally full. 22 patients on high-dependent ICU. So, and that's where he was for the next 11 days, obviously oblivious to everything that was going on around him. So, do you want to say any more, Nigel, before I...
Yeah, well, obviously I don't know anything. I do believe that I do remember stuff. I'm convinced I do remember stuff. When I was asleep, we called it me being asleep. That period of time. I think the big shock were because they'd done a CT scan, hadn't they, and couldn't find anything wrong with me apart from the broken bones from my life before this. You know, broken back 3 places and the leg in 27 places and that. So it come to you, I think, and said that I'm pretty accident prone, didn't it?
Yeah.
You know. But it's when they took me to the MRI scan, weren't it? That was...
Well, the thing was, they said that they would keep him sedated for 24 to 48 hours. But every time they tried to, they call it extubation, he wasn't responding, so they had to put the tube back in again. So they knew that there was something more deep-seated going on, but they couldn't really find out what. And then it was on New Year's Day when he went to the MRI, and it was very stressful because they have to, in Hull, the MRI scanner is in a different building, so they have to take patients off life support, put them in an ambulance to go to the MRI, and then come back again. So it's really stressful for the staff and obviously for the patient as well. And obviously for the family waiting, because I think we waited 6 hours. Nigel's elderly parents had come over, and, you know, people were basically coming over to say goodbye, really, because they were saying, we don't think there's going to be much hope. So anyway, when the consultant finally came, well, he took me to what I call the room of doom. He wanted to know what Nigel's wishes would be, and I happened to know because I'd discussed it with his best friend, and they'd been discussing things on the way, because we all know motorsport is dangerous, right? It's a risk, it's a calculated risk that people take, but you don't ever think it's going to happen to you or your loved ones. But it's something that is always, I suppose, in the back of your mind. So they'd discussed it on the way to an event, I think it was in Kent, wasn't it?
Down to Kent, yeah.
And Nigel has said to his mate Steve, you know, if anything bad happens, just switch me off. I don't want to carry on hooked up to machines. So I knew that I could confidently say that he wouldn't want to live his life hooked up to a machine, you know. So as hard as it was, I said, well, I know that he wouldn't want to live like that. It was on the New Year's Day, and I said, but I can't lose this man. We'd only been married a year, just over, and our first part of our married life, we'd been looking after my mum, who had a brain tumour. We'd nursed her at home, and she passed away in the June. So really, I was still grieving for my mum. And then to find the man that we didn't get together till, well, I was 45. So, you know, this very, very special man was suddenly not going to be there. I'm like, no, that's not an option. I said, please, can you keep him on the machines for the weekend? And they agreed to reassess on the Monday, which was the 4th, and he opened his eyes that day. So that was, that was when things really started to happen, wasn't it? So 2 days later, he was sat up in bed. And the first, I'll tell you the measure of this man, this always, if I get upset, if we get emotional, it's because we speak from the heart. I've made notes, but it's only to remind in case we forget stuff because he's done so much. But we generally just speak from the heart. So the first thing he did was he looked at me and he went like that. And I couldn't, I'm like, I don't know what you mean. Can you tell me what you mean? He kept going like that. And then I realised he was asking me if I was okay for money. That was the first thing he thought about. You know, was I okay? And then he asked if the guy that he was racing was okay as well. He wasn't bothered about himself, he was bothered about everybody else. And then my family sent me home because I hadn't slept for nearly 11 days. So, do you want to carry on?
No, I was only going to interject there with, I remember nothing about what went off, absolutely nothing. Yet, as I say, you know, you told me the story, I'd asked if the bloke I'd had the accident with was all right, yet I'd not had an accident. No. It was totally it was by myself, weren't it? So where that came from, I have no idea. Absolutely.
You're obviously conscious of him racing somewhere, weren't you?
He must have passed me or
maybe it was
passed him or whatever. Yeah. So you got sent home then?
So I went home to get some rest. That's what my family said. Mum, go home, get some rest. He's going to be okay. And they called him Miracle Man. So after that, you need to take over now, Nigel, because that's your story from when you're in the hospital.
Yeah, obviously I don't...
woke up.
Yeah, when I woke up, I don't remember when I woke up, obviously, and I don't know how long it was before I become compos mentis, really. But I remember waking up and being in a hospital, obviously, and my left side was numb, my right side had gone numb, my right foot had dropped. All I knew is that I was in hospital. Anyway, I can eat for England, even though I was ill, I was eating for England. Anyway, the nurse was bringing my food and feeding me, and then obviously they realised I could at some point feed myself. They brought the food to me, and when they came back, the food was still there. So the nurse said to me, "Why haven't you ate your food, Nigel?" And I said, "What food?" I didn't know it was there. And she goes, "Can't you see your food?" I says, "No, I can't." So then she went and fetched a consultant, and they took me down to the optical place and checked my eyes, and that's where they saw that I'd suffered purchase retinopathy. And that comes from brain damage, thoracic injury, long bone fracture, and childbirth, actually. So so I might
had all of those apart from the childbirth.
So I might have a kid I might have a kid somewhere that's 8 years old, but I don't know. But anyway, so I have
a pressure, wasn't it, in your head?
Yeah, that's right. So because I'd cracked my skull from right eye socket to my ear, when you crack your skull, your brain swells then. Randomly, I had all the correct gear on, but my helmet never had a chance to save me. Something came through the orifice where you have goggles on them, came through there, hit me in the face and my skull, cracked my skull, and that's where my brain swelling come from, and brain damage. So my helmet, it's actually got 2 scratches here, and that's where I'd gone down, hit it, and it had come up here and into my eye socket and smashed my skull.
And
so
they put a bolt in your head.
yeah,
For the
so
pressure.
that's to get the swelling down, didn't they? So
And to let
they
the
put a
pressure
bolt
out.
in, yeah. And then when you came home, you fell ill, didn't you?
Yeah, so Nigel was in hospital recovering, and I went home, but lack of sleep and extreme stress. Nigel.
Yeah.
So lack of sleep and extreme stress sadly had a really bad effect on my mental health, and I ended up being sectioned. I think it's when my body relaxed, I knew Nigel was going to be okay, and then everything kind of came crashing in on me. I was acting very much out of character, and we were having this discussion earlier. I'm not quite sure who called for assistance, but basically the men in white coats came and took me away, but I was taken away a couple of 100 miles to Potter's Bar, which is a long way from Lincolnshire. Yeah, there were no beds in the county at all. Nigel at that point had been moved to Lincoln from Hull. He didn't know any of this. He'd said to Michael, my stepson, Nigel's son, "Where's Julie? Have we been in an accident?" He said, she's in hospital, Dad. And he thought we'd been in a car accident or something, didn't you?
Yeah.
So that's how confused Nigel's brain was, obviously, at that point. Anyway, they were very kind to me in that hospital, and they managed to turn my mental health around. I was there for 2 weeks. And meantime, my family had got in touch and said Nigel's coming home on the 27th of January, but they won't let him home unless you're there. So I persuaded them to let me home on the 26th so that I could look after him. And we thought we were okay. We thought we were doing okay, but we really weren't, because Nigel had lost his business, he'd lost his eyesight, he'd got his brain injury, I was very heavily medicated, but we were the people in the middle that everybody came to for help. So we'd been looking after elderly parents, our children came to us for help. We weren't used to accepting help, were we?
No.
And I think that was quite a difficult position. We were just like, we're okay, but we really weren't okay.
Now, just living on, I don't know what, just hope and
Cheese on toast.
yeah, cheese and toast, yeah, with brown sauce on.
Yeah.
So obviously, from Julie's point of view, she kept this man alive who had woken up. You went into the psychiatric unit. You didn't know what I was. You thought I was alive. Nobody knew what I was until it was found out that I was now partially blind. At that time, I was virtually totally blind. And what I'm going to say is now, you can be blind physically and you can be blind mentally. The word blind panic is totally true. I was panicking that much because, don't forget, I woke up Sunday morning and went out racing, and then the next time I woke up, I thought it was the next day, but it wasn't. It was 11 days later, and I can't bloody see. So, millisecond, life changed for me, and I was totally panicking. That, alongside my physical eyesight loss, just nearly rendered me blind at the time. So when I came home, I couldn't function, could I? You know, I couldn't wash myself. I just couldn't do anything. I was a total wreck of a man, weren't I? And
I was trying to look after him, but I was in really no position to be looking after anybody, because
yeah, that's right. And so here we are together, just trying to be strong for each other, aren't we?
Yeah.
And yeah.
Should we go into the next?
Yeah.
So the next thing is, we had another event going on, which I won't go into detail, but we had a lot of stress, and I ended up being sectioned again. Nigel, through no fault of his own, was so heavily reliant on me. He didn't leave me alone for 1 second. I was like, all the time, it was just constant. But that, along with other things, sent my mental health spiralling again. I ended up being sectioned again. Again, sent to another hospital near Croydon this time, because no beds in Lincolnshire. Yeah, and sadly, it was an abusive environment. So I knew the minute I got in there I was in trouble. It was dirty, it was smelly, the staff were rude, and I was supposed to be going for a week for rest. I ended up staying there for a month, and they were putting more and more medication into me. Everything that shouldn't happen to you when you're being looked after and a vulnerable person did happen. And I had to get an advocate to get me out. And when he came, the second advocate came, I managed to get into a locked room to make a phone call because things were really horrendous. And he said, you shouldn't be in here, I'm going to get you out today. I've got the weight of the government behind my fist, I'm going to use it and I will get you home today, I promise. I was so scared for my life. I said, please don't put me in hospital transport. Please don't, because I don't know if I'll ever see my home again, and that's how scared I was. But I was trying to protect Nigel from this. I didn't want my family to know what was going on because our youngest daughter was expecting a baby. She actually had a baby while I was in hospital. So I eventually got home, but bizarrely, because we've both been fighting to get back to a normal life, I think it made us both really fight and be a lot stronger, because you'd had to look after yourself, hadn't you? That's the thing.
So from my point of view, the only thing I wanted to do was make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And some toast. And when Julie was away, I had to do that.
That's
and
what
that's
you
what
say.
I did.
When he was asleep, when I was away, that's how
Yeah. You know, I don't want to go into the NHS system or anything. They was very good to us, but they let us down as well, I think. So basically, Julie was away, and I was looking after myself 23 hours a day. I'd realised I'd lost my business now because I couldn't see. I'd lost my wife. I didn't know if she was ever going to come back again. I'd lost my eyesight. I'd lost me. So I wanted to commit suicide. I'd never been in that situation before. I've had a great childhood. I had great parents. I've had a great adult life. So for me to be in such a place where I wanted to commit suicide was just alien to me. And so because I'd had such a good life, I knew what a good life felt like in your heart. So I knew there was light at the end of the tunnel, even though I couldn't see it because now I'm partially blind. So that made me strive for that. And that's what really kind of kept me going, that there was hope at the end of the day. And say, Julie didn't know when she was coming home. I didn't know when she was coming home. So again, this is all within the space of 2 months, isn't it?
It was
3 months.
March, yeah. So
Yeah,
your accident was 27th of December.
Yeah. So
I actually came home again on the 4th of April. That was when we started to rebuild our lives together.
Yeah, so
2016, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, life changes that quick, obviously, and when it changes that quick, it takes a lot of adjusting to.
So the pictures here you can see is obviously Nigel in hospital, and the middle one is the first time I came home, and the second one is our first actually went for a walk on the seafront together. You can see we were shells, really. We might have been trying to smile, but there was literally nothing behind our eyes there.
Yeah, they say eyes are the window to the soul. Well, there was no soul behind there, was there? No.
So we spent 2 years. I think when something like this happens, I think it's a process, and you have to go through it. It's like grieving for the life that you've lost and adjusting to the new life that you have. And every day was difficult. Every day we struggled, didn't we? We were probably awake a few hours. But I managed to go back to work in the July, I think it was, just part-time. So I was able to leave Nigel for a little while, and we've gradually just built on that day by day, didn't we? Yeah,
absolutely. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm now this person that I wasn't 4 months ago and never going to be the same ever again. And I have to say that's a pretty daunting prospect, and especially for, I'm going to say this, two strong characters as we are and two professional characters. If I can just say, in 2005, every year they have a competition in Britain to find the top car technician, electrician, and the top 10 go to a final. And in 2005, I was in that final. So in 2005, Nigel was one of top 10 technicians in Britain. So, you know, I'm not an idiot in that sense. So it was like a big elephant that had been culled in the wild, you know, this character, this big character, weren't it? You know, and
Yeah.
so I'd lost all that, and it frightened me and worried me in equal measures. So I knew in my heart that I needed to get back some form of, I've never been normal, but some form of normality.
Yeah.
And
So the first thing that I knew when Nigel's road to recovery was I was washing the pots one day, looking out the window, and he rode past on a bicycle. So I was, okay, so tell them why you did that.
So I'd gone down to my workshop. I wanted to smell and feel the tools in my workshop that had took me to success and took me to a living for 27 years. Anyway, I remember seeing the push bike in there, and I thought, can I ride that push bike? Because they tell you one of the first things you lose with brain damage is your balance. I've lost my eyesight, so I've lost my balance, so I get on the push bike, and I thought, what's the worst I can do? And that's fall off. Again, fall off. So we've got a long drive, so yeah, I did until I come past.
Yeah.
And anyway, so here I am. I know now I've got my balance, so I'm like, right, I've got some balance here. And randomly, a good friend of ours came round.
Well, you say random.
Yeah, on a bike that I'd sold him only 2 months before I had my accident. We have a massive lawn. It's July, summertime. I've got flip-flops, t-shirt, and a vest, t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops on. I said to Robin, I says, can I have a go on that bike? So Julie and Robin said, look, Nigel, the last thing you need to be doing is riding a bloody motorbike again. So I jumped on, didn't I? Again, flip-flops, t-shirt, shorts, like you shouldn't do that. No helmet. Oh. And I went, didn't I? Yeah. And I rode around the lawn because I knew there was nothing to it. So here I am now thinking...
Don't do that at home, kids.
Yeah, don't do this at home, yeah. So I'm thinking, what can I do now? And so before I go on to that, you tell them a bit more about you because they'll be interested into my next story. So,
about what, darling?
About you. Your recovery now, for you to recover in...
Yeah, I'm not going to talk a lot about me because this is Nigel's night, and but behind every man is a woman going, oh God, don't do that. But anyway, yes, so the minute I got out of hospital, because I'd done a degree and I was in humanities actually, one of my specialises was creative writing. And I had all this trauma and pain in my head. So rather than turn to drugs or alcohol or some people...
That was later.
Some people cut themselves to release pressure. I released pressure by writing. I literally bled onto a page. So this is my book, The Hub by Joni Daniels. So I based it on what had happened to us, but it was about a lady that had had a horse riding accident. So basically that was Nigel's accident, but I did it slightly differently on the sand race, but again, differently. Artistic license. But when she'd had the accident, she went into a coma, and when she came out, she was different. And then that was my story about my experiences in both hospitals, because I didn't want to forget anything that had happened. I needed to get it out of my head because it was too painful and make some kind of sense of it. So I put it into a book. So I self-published. Had an editor who said, are you crazy? I went, well, not anymore, allegedly.
You got proof of that?
I've got proof. I got signed off by my psychiatrist, so no, and do have an aversion to commas. So anyway, it was published and it got really good reviews, and then I got a publisher for a couple of years who then decided that it wasn't selling enough, so they dumped me. But I've republished again on Amazon. So I guess it's gone through a bit of a transformation over the years, but I'm very proud of being able to get that out on there. I talk a lot about mental health and mental health recovery, because actually my problem wasn't depression. You would think I would go depressed. I actually went psychotic. That was because I'm quite a bubbly, high-vibing kind of, yay, kind of a person. I just spiraled upwards, and that was my problem, was trying to find the reality again in the middle and get myself back down to earth. So yeah, that was quite an achievement to do that, I think. So
And what are you doing in September?
I'm starting a master's because I would like to get this into a film, and we've already chosen who we want to play as Liam Neeson because he's a bit, you know, he's a bit Nige, really. And I really love Helen Mirren, and we share the same birthday, so yeah. So yeah, I would like it to be in a, you know, in a film format.
Or a play.
Or a play, whatever. But it's really, really hard to get a script into anything like the BBC or whatever. They only take people that they know. So I thought, do you know what, I'm going to learn how to do script writing properly. So that's what I'm doing, script writing for TV and screen. So I'm starting that in September. So I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah.
Yeah, so great times ahead.
Yeah.
So watch your space, Liam Neeson. Yeah. So going back to me.
Yeah, we need to talk about your challenges now.
Yes,
so we've done the bicycle, we've done the...
So the first thing I did, a good friend of mine who rides classic speedway bikes said, Nigel, if you ever want to ride a speedway bike again, you can have a go on my bike. And I said, look, Scott, the last thing I want to do is ride a bike that put me in this situation. I've lost everything. And anyway, he texted me one day and said, Nigel, I'm at Scunthorpe Speedway track on my classic speedway bike. If you want to come, you can have a go on it. So I looked at Julie. She was sat on settee together, and I said, look at this text I've got from Scott. What do you think I should do? And she says, if you want to go, I'll take you to it. So me being me, went up, and I rode for the first time a speedway bike on a speedway track. So this is my friend's classic speedway bike. This is pride and joy. Speedway bikes is like riding a wild Mustang bareback, but I got on it, didn't I? So me being me, we're coming through the pits. I see these two characters, silhouettes, and one had got a big camera on his back. So I stopped him and said, who are you? And he says, we're from BBC. I said, did you see me riding round? He says, absolutely not. We haven't come here for you. He says, what's good about you? And I says, well, I'm partially blind and I've just rode a speedway bike. So he says, we didn't film you. We've got to go to another event. Have you got a contact? So I gave him one of my cards. And then I was on BBC Lincolnshire News, weren't I, for doing what I did. And then, once I'd done that, I then got the taste of it again. Because I'm like a stick of Skegness rock, snap me in the middle, and I'll say petrol or whatever you want to do in the centre. It's in my blood. So one half of me saying, do not do this, because this is exactly what's put you into this position. And then on the other half, I'm thinking, I just need to do this. I need to get some form of normality back in my life, you know. And so that sent me on a trajectory of doing different challenges, didn't it?
Which you can see on.
Oh, it's on here, is it?
Banner here. So.
Yeah.
So
the next challenge was on Bridlington Beach. They had a drag race with classic bikes. It's called Race the Waves, and I got invited up there to ride my Triumph 350. It was called Come and Beat the Blind Bloke. That's what they billed it as. And funnily enough, that's where the blind bloke racing come from. Come and beat the blind bloke. Yeah, and I mean, I was there as a novelty effect, don't get me wrong, you know what I mean? Because my 1961 Triumph wouldn't pull skin off a rice pudding. So I did that. We went up to Bridlington, didn't we? Yeah. And then the next thing was, I'm a massive Wall of Death fan. And I know the Wall of Death family, Ken Fox and his family. And he said to me, "How do you fancy coming away with us, Nigel, on tour for a few days and learning to ride the bally bike on the front?" And I'm like, yes, please.
Not on the actual wall.
Not on the wall, but on the bally bike on the front. So I caught a train on my own for the first time, didn't I? Went down to Stevenage, got picked up, went to the event. I lived in the lorry for about 5 days. I lived the lifestyle. I learnt to ride the bally bike, which was a 1926 Indian. And I don't know if anybody knows, but an Indian is the only motorbike that has a left-hand throttle. It has a left-hand throttle, unlike a right-hand throttle on every other bike. It has a left-hand foot clutch and a right-hand gear change. So it's totally opposite to every bike I've ever rode. I've got brain damage. I can't see.
What could possibly
I'm
go
on a
wrong?
stage about 4 foot in the air, on set of rollers, on somebody's pride and joy, what could go wrong? And the answer is everything. So,
But it didn't.
But it didn't. Ken said to me, he says, before crowds come, do you want to practice? And I said, nope, I want to go out totally blind and do my thing. I stalled it, and the only reason I stalled it is because, like I said earlier, I broke my leg in 27 places and I got a bad crashed up foot, which Julie said about. I've got little ankle movement, and when I let the clutch off, it was either on or off, and it just went like that. So I did stall it, but that made it all realistic. And so anyway, I kicked it back up, got it running, and did it. Now, I don't know if anybody's been on a set of rollers, but it's a crazy thing, absolutely crazy, because part of riding a motorbike, or driving a car, obviously, when you let the clutch off, you have to give it some more acceleration to pull the weight, and the bigger the weight, the more acceleration you have to do. But when you're on a set of rollers, you're not pulling anything, so you can just let the clutch off without any accelerator or throttle, whichever you want to call it. So that was kind of crazy. And the other thing on a bike, one of the things I think you use without realising until it's took away is things coming past you. And on a set of rollers, you've got nothing coming past you. The only thing you've got is not centrifugal force. What's the one that gyroscopic effect? So after your wheels start spinning a certain revs, your bike squares up, and then you can take your feet off the floor. And so it's riding a set of rollers. I recommend anybody to do it because it's absolutely crazy. So anyway, I did it, and I think you can see it on there. I rode with hands off and feet on the handlebars like they do on the Wall of Death. Absolutely awesome experience. So I think that was probably the third one.
Yeah, but the next one was the really iconic one. It was the one where you face your demons, wasn't it? Which was
Yes.
2018 at the beach race.
And I went back to the beach, didn't I? I did 4 demonstration laps.
Yeah.
Supposed to do 2, and I think I did 6. The BBC came. They wanted to film it, didn't they?
Yeah.
I borrowed a friend's 500c grass track bike. Again, somebody's pride and joy. I went out before the races.
That's the picture there.
Yeah, with the number 6 on.
It was very emotional.
At the last minute, before I went out, they decided to pull the plug. The owners of the beach racing decided to pull the plug. And you can imagine, I just let the clutch out. I nearly wiped it out, actually. Yeah. The guy that was telling me not to do it, I nearly wiped it out because I thought, I can't swear, but I thought, yeah, here we go. And they said, do 2 laps. And, well, I miscounted. I think I did 6, didn't I? So that just felt absolutely immense. And so if I can just say this, so having my life took away, as well as my eyesight, I'm now totally independent of people. Even catching a bus, I'm dependent on a bus driver coming and collecting me at the right time. I have to have Julie to read my letters and all this kind of stuff. So I'm totally relying on other people. And being the man I was to now the man who I am now is heart-rendering and sad. It's a multitude of thought processes. But when I'm on that bike, when I'm doing these challenges, whether it's for 1 second or 2 minutes, it's me, the bike, and whoever's up there, Mr. God, whoever he is, and nobody else. And that just fills my heart with so much pleasure. It makes my life worth living. And that's really why I do these things. Not to prove anything to anybody else, not to prove anything to myself. I just want to be pre-27th of December 2015. If I can get 1 millisecond of that life back, I want that. I'd give £1 million to have my ordinary life back. It's never going to happen. And the moment I realised it was never going to happen was a turning point for us, weren't it?
Yeah.
in our recovery, you know what I mean? I only said to Julie, in fact, fully enough, I said to Julie, not many months ago, I woke up and I thought, do you know what? I'm quite happy with my life now. But how do I tell Julie? Because don't forget, if I'd have been run over by a bus or a car and I've left in this situation, every morning I wake up, I could blame that man or woman for who I am now. But there's only one person I have to blame for who I am now and who we are and what we've been through. And that's me, because I got on the bike. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to commit suicide, because it was down to me. We've lost everything. I've lost everything. And that is quite hard to live with, to be honest.
We did, but we rebuilt it.
Yeah, we did. So I woke up this particular morning, with the thought process, I'm quite happy with my life. But how do I tell Julie that? You know, the man that's ruined everything, how does he tell his wife that? I'm happy. I don't know about you. But I did tell you that I was happy, and you was quite pleased, weren't you? And that was another turning point in my life. And that is quite recent, that I am more than happy with my life. And that's because we're doing stuff, aren't we? You know what I mean?
We just kind of say yes to
driving forward,
really.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like I said before, it's a process. You have to go into, well, I don't know if everybody does it. This is what our experience. We were in victim mode for 2 years, and then we were in survival mode for a couple of years, and now we've gone on to thrive. I mean, you've done so many challenges. I think you need to talk about the drag strip now.
I do, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to do...
Yeah, so I got invited to ride a drag bike on a drag strip. Pardon me, like you do, you know what I mean? Pucker drag bike, 1260 Suzuki Nitrous. It was about 10 foot long, you know, proper pucker bike, yeah. And the man that owned it was dying imminently of cancer, sadly. And he wanted another man to ride it. And he heard about what I'm doing, and he, through somebody else, got in touch with me to see if I would ride his bike for him before he died. So I did that, and sadly, he died about 6 days after I did it, didn't I? So here I am, never been on a drag strip before, 1260 Suzuki, fully tuned, proper drag bike, never been on it. It got brought to my house Friday night, got it out of the van, I sat on it, did a burnout, put it back in the van, went to the drag strip next morning, didn't turn a wheel until I was at the start line, and I did 74 mile an hour on an eighth in about 9 seconds, didn't I? So that was that job done. That was that job done. And I thought, after we finished, I thought, that was awesome. So I thought, I need to do something different to this. I want to set a British record, a British man, British record on a British bike. Well, I got a 1961 Triumph, but as I said, that won't pull skin off a rice pudding. So I bought myself a Triumph Bonneville, didn't I? A 2015 Bonneville. I know they're not quite British, but they've still got a British look. And so we decided to set a record. So we put a lot in place to set this record. And we went to Melbourne drag strip, and I went 76 mile an hour, and I think it was 8.74 seconds, which is not bad over eighth of a mile. Standard bike, so I did that. So whilst I'm there, me being me, I heard that somebody was coming next week on electric bikes to set a record. Well, ex-auto electrician, I'm into electric stuff. So I found out the name of this guy. It happened to be, his name was Ryan Duffy. So I sent him an email. I'd fancy letting the Blind Bloke Racing ride your electric bike. So you can imagine what the email back was. And I can't really say where it were live on here. So anyway, so me being me, sent him another one back saying, well, I've done this on my Triumph. You know, I can do it on your bike. So anyway, we had 10 months talking, and he agreed to come let me do it, didn't he? So he had got this, the yellow bike, is it? Yeah. So it's an ex-Isle of Man TT0 bike, like what Guy Martin and John McGuinness rides, but a privateer one. So he came to my house and brought the bike. He undid the door. I looked at it, shut the door too, went next morning up to Melbourne, got it out of the van. I sat on it, adjusted the handlebars, didn't turn a wheel until I was at the drag strip, the Christmas tree lights, and I went off and I did about 5 runs, I think. Was it about 5 runs? Wow. And I went 86 mile an hour in 8.24 seconds.
83.
83, was it?
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, my fish is that big. Come on, give me a break, will you? 83 mile an hour, sorry. But anyway, so I went faster than I did on my Triumph. And I have to say, I don't subscribe to electric, that electric's going to take over particularly. It's a stopgap and everything else, but I have to say, riding an electric bike is pretty cool. And the torque is from 1 revolution to full revolutions, whereas on a combustion engine, internal combustion engine, you have to get the rev range up to get your top BHP. So it was pretty awesome. And
the only problem we had was him knowing where to stop, because obviously he couldn't see.
I couldn't see the finish line, could I?
So we had
earpiece in.
So stop now.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there's a cornfield at the end and he's going to carry on.
Yeah, so
it wasn't actually sitting on the bike and going down the drag strip. That was the issue. Is when
it was stopping at the other end. Stop, yeah. And I've got to say, thankfully, to straightliners, that they facilitated this, because obviously I do what I do, and I contact loads of people, including Brooklands. That's why I'm here. I sent emails to the Brooklands about who I am and what I do. I'm going to tell you this now. I shan't go into too much detail, but
don't say any names either. I
don't tell Julie everything I do. Anyway, she comes in one day, and I'm on the phone, and she says, "What are you laughing at?" Because I'm tapping on my phone, laughing. I says, "I'm either going to get blocked or the police are going to come round." She says, "Wow, what are you bloody doing?" I says, "I'm just texting Brooklands for the last time. The kind of, this man's crazy. We don't want to do with him." Anyway, I said, "Look, we're coming down here. We're stopping at Brooklands Hotel. It was Julie's birthday. We're going to Sandown Park to see a live band called Chic." I said, "I'm calling in. Blind Bloke Racing's calling in." So, now I shan't say no names. Said, "Yeah, righto then." And of course, I rocked up at the gate, said who I were.
And they went, "Oh,
all right, yeah." And within 2 hours, I was part of the team, if you know what I mean.
Part of the family.
Yeah, part of the family. Hence, been here tonight. I've lost where I am now.
Well, you were talking about the drag strip.
Drag strip.
And then about being here. So why don't you talk about your last project?
Oh, yeah, so right, electric, as I say, is... I don't subscribe to it fully, but it's ace. So I wanted to build something. I wanted something to do. And in my workshop, I'd got a classic speedway bike rolling chassis. No engine, but a rolling chassis. So I thought, right. I investigated it to see if there was any electric speedway bikes about. And in Britain, there wasn't. So that was just enough challenge for me, wasn't it? So I thought, right, I'm going to make the first ever electric speedway bike. So I set my stall out, didn't I? Obviously, I can't see properly. My workshop is, well, to say it's a mess is understatement, isn't it? I've got basic hand tools. So I thought, I need to make this, and I need to make it old school. And, you know, files and axles and all this kind of stuff. So obviously, I needed to know what motor I needed and controller and that. So I got on to Phil at Voltsport. I went on the internet and found a place called Voltsport that deals with putting electric engines, motors in cars, go-karts or whatever. So I spoke to Phil and he suggested what I needed. So I bought an ME1304 motor. It's a water-cooled motor and a Sevcon size 4 controller. He supplied me with everything. So I wanted to make this bike in such a way that I could take the electric motor out at any point and put a a Speedway engine straight in without any modification. So I'm thinking, how can I do this? Anyway, I waited for the motor to come, and the motor fitted in where the crankcases of the Speedway bike engine would have fitted. This motor fitted in with a 2mm gap around, so it was as if I'd designed it that way. And so the centre of gravity is exactly the same, because this motor is a big, 10-inch diameter, 12-inch deep motor, which is roughly the same weight as a big flywheel on a Speedway bike. So, right, that's ace. So that fits in. So I got that in on a bit of string. I did this on my own, didn't I? I didn't ask you to do anything. I kept going to my workshop and doing stuff, and it just grew from there. And everything was just, well, obviously it was designed in my head, but I couldn't design it on paper because I can't bloody see to do it. And I used all recycled stuff. The only thing I had to buy was the motor and the batteries and the controller. Now, the motor was second-hand, but brand new, if you know what I mean. It was what Phil couldn't sell that on, so he sold it me. The controller was second-hand, but the batteries were brand new. I didn't go down the LiPo route because that meant too much work for my poor eyesight. So I just went on the AGM matte batteries, what you would put in a motorbike. I got 4 of them, 48 volts is just what I needed. And it's a shame you can't, oh, it's there, look. Oh,
yeah.
Look at that, look.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the actual batteries on top of the motor is just like a petrol engine, well, a methanol engine that Speedway bikes run. So it feels and rides just like a genuine methanol run engine. So I built it. And I filmed it all by myself, didn't I? I set the video up and filmed me building it all up and everything. That's now in a film, which is, I've kept that back for in case a company wants to use it, which fingers crossed they will do. So I thought, you've made this, Nige. Don't just stay there, you need to bloody ride it. So I arranged with Scunthorpe Speedway track to go up and ride it, didn't I? Yeah. So I took it up to Scunthorpe and rode it. Now, there is a documentary out there of me doing it. As you can probably tell, I shoot from the hip. There's no bullshit. I tell it as it is. And it didn't perform like I hoped it did, to be quite honest. But a good friend of mine, a Speedway rider, come up, Steve, and he got a skid on it, didn't he? So that was all. I rode it. I could only ride as much as I can with poor eyesight, but he come and got a skid on it, so that was good enough for me. But I just wanted to prove to the big manufacturers that if a blind bloke can make one in his workshop, then there's no reason why big manufacturers can't make one. Because Speedway, 4 laps, flat out, it's all about torque, only 4 laps. Well, if that's not made for electric motors, then I don't know what is, because, electric motors got full torque from straight away, which is what you need with Speedway, and batteries can last 4 laps and then get recharged up in between heats. So I just think it's a no-brainer.
You were chatting with the guy in Denmark, weren't you?
Oh, yeah. So in Denmark, as in Europe all the time, they're always more forward-thinking than us Brits. He's built electric Speedway bike, and he now sells them. And he's done a lot of research, he's put a lot of money into it, and these bikes are perfect. But when I was talking to him, he started off exactly the same as me, exactly the same motor, the MT1304, the same Sevcon controller. So 2 men, miles apart, are doing the same thing. I just find that kind of crazy as well. So electric Speedway bikes are now coming. There's a lot of people not wanting them. The British Speedway fraternity they're not wanting electric at all. I get a lot of, not abuse, but I get a lot of negativity when I put about electric Speedway bikes and stuff. All because it's the sound, it's the smell, and like I said to one guy, I says, look, if there's anybody needs smell and sound, it's me, because I can't bloody see. I says, but the thing is, sound and smell are shut in stadiums, because they've got houses near them. If you can run the same sport to the same standard, but without sound, I says, surely it's got to be a good thing. You know, so, yeah. Are we out of time?
How are we doing?
I don't know, I can't see.
No, it's 8:45.
Oh, it's 8:45. So, well...
I think you need to talk a little bit about... Well, I've written down a lot of the
fine.
things that Nigel's done, so I'm just going to... Because there's so much, I didn't want to miss anything out. So, the first thing...
Hey, I've been an Avon man as well, so, yeah.
You were an Avon man?
I wear it in
was
the
that?
80s. Yeah.
OK, we won't go back that far. I'm not putting that under achievements. So the first thing was his bicycle, then he went round the lawn, then he went to Scunthorpe, then he did Mablethorpe Beach, then the Wall of Death, raced the waves. Third in the country for 10-pin bowling.
For partially blind, ranked third in country twice. Yeah.
Represent a company called AbleNet, who provide different experiences for people with disabilities. So Paul from AbleNet sends Nigel to test things out.
I'm the guinea pig.
We've done indoor skydiving.
Drove a Ferrari, Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Flew a plane. So if anybody
yeah.
wants to fly Concorde, I'm up for that.
Flew us over Alton Towers, didn't you? And the pilot said, and would you like to land the plane? He said to me, would you like to go? I'm like, oh, OK.
So you sat in back, weren't you?
Sat in the back. And he said, oh, would you like to land the plane, Nigel? And I said, yes. I'm like, oh, my God.
Of course I would. I paid my money. Of course I would.
So yeah, he landed the plane, obviously very safely. We've just been up to represent them at a place near Harrogate to represent the company and look after the clients that were participating driving the supercars.
These are blind and visually impaired people driving cars. Oh,
one guy had never driven before, had he, at all, and
no.
drove that Aston Martin DB9, which was incredible.
You know, obviously,
incredible.
I have driven, so for me to not be able to drive now legally on the road, it is just rips my heart out. So somebody who's born blind, has never driven, for them to drive, on one hand,
smiles on their faces.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's just, it puts as much smile on their face as it does on mine driving,
He's also an ambassador for the Wilberforce Trust in York, which support deaf and blind people.
Yeah, just like this,
Yeah. He's driven a stock car, a go-kart. He's got his 2 UK records. Built his speedway bike. The last one was a hot rod drag race. You did that.
I got invited down to a vintage hot dog. I always say hot dog. That's because I like food.
Race.
Hot dog. Yeah.
He's had a photographic exhibition about the Wall of Death. Bought a tractor while I was in Dublin because now we can do things independently, and I'm a massive music fan, particularly Duran Duran for the last 40 years. So I've been able to go and do a few things with my friends, and and we do things a lot together. After his accident, we were like that. We just literally couldn't let each other go. But gradually we've been able to have our own lives as well as do a lot of things together, and we support each other in our endeavours, what we do. So I was in Dublin with my friends seeing Duran Duran, and when I came home, he bought a tractor, which he now drives around the lawn, don't you? And the grandkids...
When we cowboy hat on?
One of the grandkids came in and she went, Grandma, Granddad's driving around the lawn with nothing on. What? But she meant no helmet. So I said, it's all right, he doesn't need a helmet on his tractor, he's fine.
Super snitch.
Yeah, definitely. We've done quite a lot of travelling. We were in New York at Christmas, and so we were right near Times Square. And Nigel said, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm like, OK, right, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm just going to go over the road.
You go round in the square.
Go round the block, right, OK. So when he came back, of course, he had a tale to tell. There was a fire department literally around the corner, so he'd been chatting with the fire guys. And they've been showing him around the engine and everything. Taking photos. Because people said, oh, you're going to go up the Empire State? No, not really. Nigel can't see. There's not much point. He didn't even want to go outside on the boat to see the Statue of Liberty because it was raining. He's like, I'll stay in here, thanks. But he likes to talk to real people doing a real job. So he was really animated chatting to the fire department, showing him all around the building, and they got a shout, and he nearly got locked in the fire station because he didn't see the screen coming down.
So I went live on Facebook, look at me, I'm in the fire
I'm in
department.
the fire department.
And they're getting a call out. And because I've got no peripheral vision at all, I'm
yeah.
stood about 3 inch behind the door that's coming down.
Yeah.
And as it come past my eyes here, I thought, so
Yeah.
lights
I'd
run
sit
out.
down
And,
to it, yeah.
and so I nearly got trapped in a American fire department.
There is always a story, always. And now Nigel does a lot of talks. We do them independently and we do them together as well. The last big one we did was in Newcastle at St James's Park for the Northern Acquired Brain Injury Forum, and we spoke in front of like their medical professionals and barristers, actually talking about our personal experience from people living with brain injury. Because a lot of people don't realise that, I mean, obviously you see, you know, the white stick, people realise, obviously Nigel has a visual impairment, they don't realise he has brain injury as well, which can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. And Nigel has no filter at all now. He didn't have much of one before his accident, but he literally has none whatsoever.
So this woman she claims she's my wife, and I don't know if she is or not, because I can't see her face. So, but she drives me about, so that's okay.
You can pay me later.
But you've got no wrinkles, have you?
No, exactly. So yeah, we've spent the last 8 years really rebuilding our lives together, and we're just looking forward to what's next, really. And yeah, I mean, we both. I have a health and wellness business. I'm partnered with a franchise called Juice Plus. We do nutrition. So I've got business all over the world now. I had to rebuild my life, as well as Nigel had to rebuild his. So sometimes you have to adapt, and I think as humans, people are very, very good at adapting. Like, I mean, obviously with the pandemic, people had to adapt, and you know, you find ways round things when it's so dark and you just don't think there's any light at the end of the tunnel. But as long as you've got a little spark in here that never goes, I sound like Morrissey, that never goes out, you know, you can just help that really shine brighter. And I think because a lot of people have said, oh, you're still together, a lot of people would have split up. We've heard that a lot. Well, that, you know, statistically, people's marriages...
60%.
60%, was it?
Yes. So people have said this to me and Julie. Are you still together? You know, individually. Yes, we are. When I did a talk in York in front of 150 solicitors, there was a top neurosurgeon there doing his PowerPoint, and one of the things that came on his PowerPoint was that up to 60% of couples split up after brain injury. I came home and told you that, didn't I?
Yeah.
So this is why people have asked us, are we still together? So whether it's remarkable we are, I don't, you know, what's this... Statistics say that we shouldn't be together, but we are. And, I mean, we were strong before, but I think I don't know what we're not any more stronger, but we're just together, aren't we? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, there's worse people out there than us, you know.
We just do what we do.
We just do what we do. And you know, what we just want to say is that we don't want to put anybody off, but life changes in the blink of an eye, don't it?
I think we're actually running out of batteries now. Okay, so I'd just like to say thank you, Nigel, and I'm glad we invited you back.
Cheers, thank you.
And Julie.
Thank
you
you
very much. And we will invite you back again.
You're going to invite me back? I never used to get invited back twice.
One of the things is that when he was getting into that car, he said it under his breath, you couldn't really hear it, but he actually said, can I drive it? Yeah, exactly. So, yes, and Nigel came to the Motorcycle Day last year, and I'm sure there'll be a space for him next year as well. So you're always welcome, and we enjoyed your talk tonight. Thanks very much. Incredibly inspiring, and I just love the way that you've taken and owned Blind Bloke. From a sort of derogatory comment in the background, you've owned it, and well done. Well done, Nigel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.